Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dialogue to Destiny. Our goal is to engage in discussions that lead to personal and systematic change. These conversations can broach subjects that some may find offensive. It is not the intent of Dialogue to Destiny to in any way offend. Our intent is to encourage open dialogue so that collectively we can all move forward.
Hey everybody, today's discussion will delve into the issue of labor unions in America. We will discuss and debate the history and necessity of unions in today's and yesterday's workplaces. Our guest on today's episode is our good friend and my sparring partner, Kirean Knutson. Kirean presently holds the position of President-elect CWA Local 7250. So we want to welcome you, Kirean. How you doing today?
I'm really good. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right,
I've
man.
been appreciating your show.
Thanks, man. We appreciate that. Now, is there? Can you go ahead and just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your history in the union?
Yeah. So let's see. I grew up in South Minneapolis. I've been working at AT&T for 17 years. And before I worked at AT&T, I worked at UPS for about 10 years. So I was involved in the Teamsters when I worked at UPS. And then since working at AT&T, I've been involved in the Communication Workers of America, Local 7250, mainly as a union steward and then as a chief steward. And then just this fall, I was elected president starting in January of the local. So
Impressive history. What I remember most about unions is from my childhood. Most of the people in my household that I grew up with were all in unions, and I can remember being roughly around 5 years of age and being down at the union hall with my mom and the atmosphere and how vibrant it was and how connected each and every person that was part of that union was.
right.
I don't have that same sense or feel about the unity, the solidarity of union people nowadays.
Right.
I think they're out individually or small groups collectively, if I'm making sense.
Yeah.
What do you think has contributed from my memory to what I see now
Right.
as far as unions? Because I still see them as important. I just
Right.
don't see them as effective as they were. Is
I
that
hear you.
fair?
I think so. And I think there's a whole bunch of reasons we could run down. But I think one of the biggest ones is that there's been the unions have bureaucratized. So that instead of having a sort of like collective community of workers, roughly with all equal say, trying to figure out things together, you have basically a layer of officers who, although possibly elected, some appointed, they kind of get stuck in there for a long time and they start to develop their own interests, sort of separate from the rest of the workers. And to them, it gets to be a little bit of an annoyance to have everybody come in and say their opinion and hash things out. And it just gets more comfortable to let them make all the decisions and let them. And so I think that process has really helped take away that feeling that you're describing from most union halls in this country. And if the unions are ever going to have this kind of impact that they need to have, then we need to bring back that feeling, And I think if I remember right from what you were saying, that was also a time of struggle when the workers, when your mom and other people were organizing around a strike. And so that's another thing that's been missing is that the unions have basically decided only to rely on giving money to politicians and not to organizing themselves to take action.
That was a feel that I was getting, that they have politicized and that they've moved their agenda towards the parties and not the people, and become more political action committees and groups.
Right.
And I think sometimes that they don't represent holistically the group, and then they start to get divided amongst the group themselves.
Yeah.
As union people, I think when we come together and we have an agenda, we're on a battlefield together. And it's sometimes there's a battle line that is drawn between that group. If I'm making the right, analogy here, you know, putting the right picture to it.
Yeah.
With that being said, I work in a building where there's one union,
Right.
but there's two locals.
Right.
I see more strength and more unity in one union
Right.
than I do the other.
Mm.
Spokes of the same umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
both to shield and guard the employee,
Right.
you know, from unfair practices from management.
Right.
What causes one? It's same building,
Yeah.
same union.
Yeah.
What causes one to be stronger than the other, and what can be done to resuscitate the one to bring them up to speed?
Right.
Is it a thing of more coaching and teaching between the two groups, the stronger helping the newer, or the older helping the newer, stronger helping the weaker, or is there a need for a merger?
Yeah, so big question. A little more background on it. Steve and I both work together in the same building downtown, the AT&T Tower, and we're in different departments, different divisions, I guess you could say, and with different management structures. But we're working for the same company. Paycheck comes from the same company. We're actually under the same contract, but he's in a different local union than I am. And so it's a little bizarre that we are divided like that. And not only that, then we have the fact that the wireless call center out in Bloomington is in your local, but the wireless stores around the state are in my local. So again, it's like, why are we divided? And they're under the same contract, right? So, you know, and I don't really know the history of how that division even started, but I do think that we need to think about whether that division makes sense anymore, you know, and whether we'd be more powerful if we were united together. Now, I don't want to like push everybody together before they're ready to. So what I've been saying is let's start talking about it. Let's start talking about what would it look like if we came together, you know, and maybe, you know, let's list out all the pros, let's list out all the cons, and then let's try and find some things we can do together. Yeah, and I think one of the things that that does make me feel good is that for the first time, your local and our local went out on strike together, you know, and that was kind of a big deal because I think the bosses were surprised when teleconference came out, and I thought, I know it made my coworkers feel excited to see you all come out, and it made us all feel stronger. So my hope is that we can keep working together and at least start talking about whether it would make more sense to be united.
I mentioned that very same scenario.
Okay.
Sorry, Dack, please go ahead.
No. I mean, hey, okay. Now we've had enough of a love fest between you two.
Yep.
You know, I'm gonna put a different spin on what I, you know, with 24 years at AT&T in the unions, and I also worked for UPS under the Teamsters. You know, with the Teamsters as well. For a few, you know, a while back, I don't know. That was probably in the late '90s, so it was you know, early '90s maybe. It was a long time ago.
Right.
Either way, but you know, one of the things that I personally noticed is, you know, especially when it comes to people that hold, you know, whether they're stewards or AVP positions and roles in the union, a lot of them, I think, use those roles to cover for their, you know, it's almost like a extra security blanket for their lack of a decent work ethic. You know, I mean, you know, like I said, in 24 years at AT&T, you know, I've been, you know, I've gotten in, you know, Kirean and I, just to give you a little history, we've had these discussions for 15 years. Yeah. You know, I mean, we would meet up in the break rooms, the coffee rooms, whatever, bathroom or whatever. Skyways, and we would have these discussions because, you know, there's just so many things. Am I a person that's going to say that there's absolutely no good that a union can do? No, I'm not going to say that. But what I see the union doing, and it kind of goes back to what Kirean was just saying before he turned it over to me. You know, I think that there's too many games and antics, you know, that happens. You know, whenever it's time for union contracts to be renewed, all of a sudden that we have to walk through the office and distract the business of the company. We decide we're going to walk out, and you being in a leadership position in the local down there, I wonder what is it that you think is gained by these walkouts that mean absolutely nothing. These people walk away from the job, Kirean. They walk away for a couple hours, and they know that there's no ramifications for their walking away. Now, because those same people that sit there and get upset when somebody doesn't participate in their little games, you know, they get upset. They give you these certain eyes. Those same people, I know without a doubt, cannot go 3 days without pay. But they think because you guys are coming together as a unit, right, that gives them some kind of strength or security. So what is it that you think is gained by the clicking in this sense that the union has become the enemy of the company that they're employed by?
Well, it's a lot. You gave me a lot to work on there. So I'm gonna try and hit all the points as much as I can, though. So I mean, the first thing for me is we got to pull back and see the big picture, right? And the big picture is that we work for one of the most powerful corporations in the world. Brings in billions of dollars a year. Yeah. They did that. They've done that throughout COVID. They did that during the George W. recession too, because the iPhone had just come out. The iPhone was a new invention at the end of so even during that recession, AT&T was massively profitable. Now, at the same time, you know, because of these union contracts that were established a long time ago, I make a living wage. You know, I'm not going to say that I'm wealthy, because I'm not, you know, and I'm not going to say that there haven't been times where I've still, you know, my finances haven't been strong enough, but I know that I have a certain kind of stability in this job that a lot of my friends and family don't necessarily have. You know what I mean? And that isn't necessarily about how hard you work or not, you know, because I know plenty of people that work really hard who are poor. Right. And I know people that are wealthy that don't even know how to work. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you do too. But so I think the big picture you have to look at is there's this corporation that is making billions of dollars off of us. We're the ones creating that wealth. We're the ones doing the work that needs to be done to keep that network and that technology and that billing and that payment system and that teleconference bit rolling, right? We're the ones who do it. And in this situation, AT&T is looking to downsize, outsource, offshore our living wage jobs. And I think there's a real question about, well, then why should they be the ones to get to decide to do that? Why should these powerful people in Dallas or New Jersey be able to decide that X amount of people in North Minneapolis are no longer going to have living wage jobs, or X amount of people in Hibbing are not going to have living wage jobs anymore? Because it's not like they're not making the money. And then from that point of view, I have to look at it as like, well, since we don't have billions of dollars, what do we have? And we have our labor. That's what we have. And unfortunately, in my view, and I'll say this right out because this is true of all the big unions, none of the big unions have organized to stand up to these big corporations. Not in a real way. Not in a way that really takes them on. So what I see out of our small efforts is to start trying to get that ball rolling and to teach people how to stand up. And from there to try and make it contagious into the rest of the telecom industry or the rest of the working class in Minneapolis. And so one example we talked about was that to some degree, I think it has spread in the tower, where stuff used to just be happening in, the MBCC. Now it's also happening in teleconference. Now, it can't just stand there, because if Minneapolis goes on strike, they just divert the calls to Nashville, which they actually did one time, which is Nashville is another CWA location, different contract, but CWA workers didn't even know they were taking our calls, so I wouldn't want to call them scabs, but AT&T with a flip of a switch could divert calls away. So we can't think that we can just go on strike by ourselves, but what we're going to have to do is get the rest of the locals and hopefully the rest of the union to start uniting together and pushing back against these powerful corporations. And that's the only way I see you can do it. Because you mentioned like individuals, some work harder, some don't. The problem is, even if I'm a very hardworking individual by myself, I'm never going to be able to push back against a company, you know, of that size and strength. And sometimes it has nothing to do with who's working hard. Like they closed, you know, just a couple years ago, they closed the Syracuse office, which we used to deal with a lot in my department. You know, we'd be transferring calls there, we'd be getting emails from people. So Minneapolis people transferred out there, so we had some connections with people out there. Yeah. I know some of the people that transferred out there were hardworking people, because I'd be getting emails from them, sometimes too many, like, whoa, hold up. You know, I'm trying to catch up. And, you know, they got there, that center got closed. And it wasn't due to them not being hard workers. So my point is that, yeah, in every group of people, you're going to have some people that are hard workers, some people that are you know, not hard workers, and some people that are in the middle. And that's true of any group in society, I would say. And my point is that we still need to bring everybody together, though, to unite, you know, and that's going to be what's needed to push back if we have any chance against. I'm talking too much now.
No, let it go.
Yeah. All right. I can start rambling.
No, man, we appreciate that. You know, kind of you know, more overhead. You know, we pull back, you open up the aperture on the conversation. So now I'm seeing more things that are taking place in here, as far as the things that are that you're saying about the offshore outsourcing, but unions were supposed to keep jobs here.
Yep.
They were supposed to help that. Now we see more and more companies that are outside of our borders that are doing a great percentage of non-union business that's coming in. Now, if these political parties are creating these pacts within unions, how are these jobs escaping from the U.S.?
Right.
How are they leaving? If we're working together, we're supporting these people that are in office,
right,
but yet and still our jobs are going away.
Right.
They're getting smaller. Yeah. And then if you want the same job, you got to take it for $10 less and have maybe 50% of the coverage.
Right.
Now, I understand that CWA has done a well of a job for us. I have a quality of life through there, and I know the union has played its part in that. Where are the jobs?
Right.
Where are the jobs?
Yeah.
And I think this is the conversation that I originally started having with you at the beginning. This is just probably another spoke on that.
Yeah.
Why? What happened to our strength?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're 100% right. I think what's happened is that a few different things have happened, but some of the big ones are that, you know, the corporations have gone global, and the unions still haven't. Right. We tend to still think of, you know, working class people in Mexico or in China as our enemy instead of as our brothers and sisters, in my view, which is how we should see them. And labor laws were written to make it really hard to do the thing. Basically, everything that was done effectively by the unions in the 30s to build the unions was made illegal. And I'll give you a couple of concrete examples. So it's illegal now for mobility, the wireless, which is the fastest growing part of AT&T, because everyone has cell phones now, right? If they're under a different contract, if they were to go out on strike, and then we went on strike out in solidarity with them to back them up, even though our contract wasn't up, that would be illegal, and AT&T could sue CWA. AT&T could threaten to fire us. So it creates this whole dynamic where anything that is your basic solidarity, they've made illegal. You can't have sympathy strikes with other groups. Now, the truth of the matter is that you just have to be willing to break the law. Now, no one should break the law, you know, just sort of willy-nilly, you know, because you don't want to line a bunch of people up just to get them lose their jobs. That'd be the worst way to go. But just because something's illegal doesn't mean it can't be done. And, you know, I try and study and learn a lot from the black freedom struggle in this country. And I know you guys do too. And I mean, that's a big example. I mean, just because something was people were told that it was illegal, it didn't turn people around. Yeah. And so I think that the unions need to take some examples from that. And it does mean taking some risks but if you look at it, the whole tide is coming against us. So at some point we're going to need to figure out, well, how do we stand up to that tide? Because right now, these rich corporations, these few billionaires around the world are really controlling everything. I saw something, there's like 8 white dudes that have as much wealth in the U.S. as 50% of the population or something like that. And have all, and of course have all the say. When they call a politician, you better bet that politician calls them right back. You know what I mean? Where most of our members, can't even get a call back about something real basic,
Sometimes we can't make our members don't make the necessary calls either.
True enough. True enough.
And, what do they say? Every dream has business. Every dream has business and work to it. So every dream that we have, there's going to be work in business that we have to take care of as well. And I would like to see the less lip service union and the more actionable union. And it seems like when the rubber meets the road, the ranks get thin.
I hear you. But I think the thing I think we have going for us right now, to try and put a positive spin on it, because there's a lot of negative, and you look out the window. I mean, it's not like you're making it up. It's real. There is a lot against us. But a couple things I'll just bring up in terms of positives. Okay, in 2011 in Wisconsin, when the Republican governor there basically took away a bunch of the rights for public sector workers all across the state just by fiat, kind of. There was a mass movement that arose in Wisconsin all over the state, small towns and big cities. A lot of it, the teachers union goes into every community in the state. So it's a way to kind of spreads out all there. Then there's all these other different industries that are around the state and different unions. And there was a mass movement in Wisconsin that was on the verge, I believe, of going on a general strike, meaning everybody, no matter what their contract, no matter what their union, maybe even if they weren't even in a union, would have all gone on strike together. But one of the biggest obstacles to them doing that was the union leadership, ironically. The union leadership was as scared of that happening as the bosses and the politicians were. And I think that part of that is because they're scared of losing their little niche and their little positions of power to the masses of regular working class people. And, I got to go to Wisconsin a couple times during that period when there was big demonstrations outside the Capitol and got to see the mood in the state. And it was so different. It almost felt like I was in a different country, even though Wisconsin, Minnesota, we almost think of as being the same damn place. But this was like, I felt like going to a different country just because the consciousness was so different. And I actually with some friends, drove to Milwaukee. We were in Madison, but we drove to Milwaukee because we heard Jesse Jackson was speaking at a church in Milwaukee. And this was interesting to me because most of the union folks out in Madison, was multiracial, but it was overwhelmingly white. So I was thinking, well, what happens if Black Milwaukee steps into this as well? Then you're going to have a movement that's real interesting and potentially really powerful. And, this was after your guy Obama was elected. So
that's my guy.
So Jesse didn't have some of the same clout that he once had, but he was basically trying to tell people now's the time to come into the streets, and not just in support of the unions in Madison, but in support of the unions in Madison and bringing our own issues. We're going to go out in the street in solidarity with Madison and with all the unions across the state, but we're also going to bring up the issues of the inner city in Milwaukee. And that was his formula. Now I have criticisms of Jesse Jackson too, but on that point, I think that was exactly right for the kind of strategy we need, and it would have forced the unions to have to deal with those demands too. Like jobs are needed in the inner city. Some of these union jobs that get locked up by mostly white guys need to be distributed.
Well, see, and that's part of the problem, man. Yeah. I see the unions, because historically unions have actually aggressively worked to keep black people out. Mm-hmm. The unions were not developed or created for black people. It was created to give pretty much unskilled white people an opportunity to make a middle class living. So it was, so people like Steve and I were pretty much exempt from most unions probably till the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so my thing is like you said something about, you know, how, you know, like American workers should view like people in Mexico as our brothers.
Right.
Doesn't that kind of go against this bringing jobs to America? Because if we unionize, if we link unions and link support with people in other countries, that's going to drive jobs to those countries. So how is it productive, or you know, to the union? How is it in the union's best interest to promote unionizing other countries? I mean, workers in other countries. When we're trying, when all I hear from unions is keeping good, high paying jobs in America. Another thing I wanted to hit on is you know, for me, I've always felt like the unions, they almost, I'll go to this.
Yep.
You know, not this last contract, but the contract before that. I remember the local AVP at that time was running around telling people to draw up grievances. Okay, why you're trying to draw up grievances because they believe that strengthens their argument when it comes to negotiations, and I don't understand those kinds of approaches. See, I'm a person that believes, you know, you want jobs to stay in your office. You want jobs to, and I understand a company like AT&T, it's all about the bottom line. And I know for, you know, my son, he calls me a company man all the time. And I think you've even called me that.
Maybe
you know,
if I was mad once.
No. The thing is, man, is my thing is, you know, I think that if you know, diplomacy, whether it's country versus country or company versus union, diplomacy works. You know, I think that if the union spent as much time promoting positive, good work ethic, promoting people actually showing up to work, you got so many. You got, because I personally feel that's why these offices in AT&T are losing. You got, I mean, this program called FMLA, and I'm gonna see. I'm not in corporate America anymore, so I can freely talk about, you know, these things. See, these programs called FMLA. Somebody told me that in FNF the acronym was found myself lazy in the AM. Okay, so people take advantage of stuff like that. You know, so my attitude is, if you don't want to work, let somebody come and join this company that actually appreciates the job. You know, if you want to take a day off a week, 2 days off a month, 25 days off a year, I personally don't want to work beside you, because what you're doing now there are people that have legitimate concerns. But people walking around talking about the sunlight, the lights in the office hurts their eyes, so they can't come to work. People talking about all of these things that they just made up. You know, I mean, I'm not gonna support that kind of stuff, man. I mean, so my thing is, you know, and you know how I am about this, man. I don't understand why it is that unions spend so much of their energy defending and trying to keep those people employed, when they're actually, I think it's counterproductive to your job. I think it puts your job at threat to keep people like that around. So I know that since they changed some of the policies in the contract, I guarantee you a lot of people's FMLA days have been reduced drastically, because it was all a scam for them. And I know a lot of union people aren't gonna like what I'm saying, and that's okay, because I know that there's a lot of people that agree with what I'm saying as well. You know, so what is it? Why is it that the union spends so much of their energy defending the people that are almost a liability to their movement? You know, I kind of figured it out. Over 24 years, I think I've given $15,000 in union dues to the union. Okay, now I have.
You did some math before the show.
Well, you know, no, I actually did this when I was still with the company. Right. And the thing is I was sitting there thinking to myself, man, what has the union ever given me? You know, what is it that the union has ever given me that I feel, and now people will say, hey, your wages, you're this, you're that. You know, I come from a commission sales environment. I made this kind of money before I came to AT&T. You know, see, I believe in merits. I believe the person that works harder, the person that shows up to work, the person that contributes the most to the company should get paid the most. It shouldn't be because you're older than someone, that you have more seniority than someone, and you're a horrible worker and you get all the benefits. You get the best schedule, you get the overtime when it's offered because it's by seniority. Everything seems to fall in your lap simply because you happen to start at the company before the other person. You know, because I know if I own a company and if I have employees, I want people there that are producers for me. I don't want people there that just come and fill a seat, complain the whole time, and then expect all the good things to come to them. So I know I threw a lot at you, Kirean, man, but you know how I am. Yep. I mean,
all right.
So go ahead and address some of that.
Let's bang back. I do want to circle back around at some point to that whole discussion about racism in the unions too, because that's an important one.
Yeah.
So I know that's how you kind of started out, and I want to deal with that too in detail later. In terms of what you're raising about the issue of unions defending people who you regard as being not productive or less productive,
I regard
and FMLA, which is the Family Medical Leave Act, which came in and allowed you to, if you got certified by a doctor that you were sick, it allowed you to miss work for a certain amount of hours per year without getting fired, is what it did. So, and I think it came from another one of your guys.
It did.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my first couple points on this. One is, when I was chief steward for 6 years in the tower, that meant I was generally in every meeting with somebody that was getting called in for discipline. Usually had attendance issues. Sometimes, you know, a rare occasion there'd be some kind of incident that happened, you know, in the building. Mainly it was attendance issues, and those attendance issues were always related to something. You know, sometimes people like do the math and they figure, okay, how many days can I miss before I get my first letter? How many days till I get my third letter? All that's fine, whatever. Then they kind of know what they're into, and we're just kind of going through the process, make sure they get treated fairly, but they already know kind of what the steps are. But then you run into some people that have real crises, and the thing is like in the working class, you know, we don't have all the resources that the wealthy have. So when people have a crisis in their family, maybe it's a kid who's in trouble, maybe it's a issue of drug or alcohol addiction, maybe it's something else that happens that just kind of like shakes their lives. All of a sudden it gets, and it's real. It's not made up. It's not like I'm inventing something because I'm just chilling, you know, making money somewhere else or something. It's that there's real crises that happen in people's lives, you know, and I got to see that a lot, you know what I mean? And so, you know, and sometimes some really tragic shit too, you know, where people, sorry for cussing, but just, you know, where people were over their heads, and maybe it was due to maybe a couple mistakes they might have made, or sometimes it had nothing to do with anything they did, but maybe one of their partner or somebody else in their family or something else. And all of a sudden they're like treading water, you know, just having a hard time in life. And then them to lose this job, for me, I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, you know, this sister or this brother's in trouble. But at least right now they have a steady paycheck coming in. Yeah. I know them to be a good person. I know that they don't screw over people. I know that they try and generally help people out. A lot of them, your assumption about who's a hard worker and who's not, I question that a little bit, just because there would not necessarily be a dichotomy in that HR room with people facing discipline. There'd be people who are hard workers in there. There'd be people that were not hard workers in there. And there'd be most people who are somewhere in the middle, which is probably where I am. You know what I mean? Now, you're a hard worker. And I appreciate that about you. So my point is that I felt an obligation to be like, yo, Adam, if I can help this person maintain their paycheck, which maybe they'd count on, their family counts on, maybe their extended family, because we got people that take care of their grandkids. You know, we got people that take care of their grandparents off of their checks. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I felt an obligation to be like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure that they're not run out of here because they're in some kind of crisis. And I feel fine about that, man. I do. I feel like that was something that should be expected of the union, and I felt morally,
Right on.
righteous trying to do it. You know what I mean? Now, are there people that play a certain game with different things? Yeah. And then we didn't invent the rules. Sometimes the company didn't invent the rules. Like in the FMLA case, the government invented the rules, right? So then it's like it's a matter of checking boxes. And if they're checking all the boxes and the company says, oh, you need to check A, B, and C, and they only got A and C checked, but then they go back and get B checked, then I'm going to say, hey, they got B checked now. They're in line, and I feel like that's also part of my obligation. You know what I mean? If these are the rules, then, and our people are checking the boxes. Now, whether I'm not going to go investigating people. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go see what someone's doing when they call in on FMLA, So, is anybody faking it? Undoubtedly somebody is, but also it's there for, if I get cancer or my kid gets in some, accident where they have to be at the hospital with them. I mean, these are the kinds of things that protect people's jobs. So,
I understand.
So I kind of feel like, because the other thing that happens, and I know you've seen this too, is sometimes people are not hard workers, but they're protected by the company, by management, because of their relationship with management.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always necessarily the union that's protecting people that are quote unquote lazy. It's that, it's all about these different relationships that happen. And the way I try to approach it is, let's make sure the company is not screwing anybody over. And let's try and go above and beyond in making sure people have the right, somebody in their corner if they're going through something. So
It was something that he had said about our Mexican brothers that you took offense to.
Oh, right. We'll come back to that one too.
Okay. My thought is, I'll take a swipe at it, a novice swipe at it. Since I was in high school 40 years ago, they've been saying all the jobs have been going where?
Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but we're trying to build a wall to keep everybody from coming in here, right? Even to this very day, 40 years later.
Mm-hmm.
All the jobs are there, but they're coming here to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
See the underlay for the overplay of the jobs. All the jobs are leaving. See, it's called industrial slavery. See, if I can send you down a job down there and it's non-union, and I can give you $2, then it's $2 a day. See, that's why I need to look out for my brother there, because if they're down there selling that same product here and making that type of money, there's no reason why I should get, snatching a figure out of the air. There's no reason why I should get $150 a day and he gets $1.50 a day. See, that's where we have the unions when we've backed some of these political parties and whatnot, and some of these people that are in office, man, that are in bed, because you have to understand they're in bed with business. Because there's only really three things that matter, right? Money, business, politics. And I would hate to see the union get caught up in that triangle, in that Bermuda Triangle there. And that's what's happening. Those three entities are getting so strong that they're driving the decisions that affect us on this level. It is rolled downhill, and it is rolled down heavy. See, that's why I have to make sure that he has a living wage, because then that creates a different lifestyle. We don't see what happens, let's just say Juarez, at that border right there. Or what you see happen as you get a little bit further past the touristy part of Tijuana. You know what I'm saying? As you get further down there, you look at the lifestyle that the young men, and God forbid that the young ladies have to live. See, unionizing helps take care of a problem that goes deeper than that.
I got something for you.
And I still, don't get me wrong, I'm talking positively about something I know that needs to be fixed. Said that in the beginning. But I do want to hear what you got to say, because you just want to verbally knock my cap off. But go ahead.
Yes, you do. Go ahead. You got something you want to add to what Steve is saying?
No, I mean,
Karen?
I basically agree with what he's laying out, because I think the thing is that the bosses create this competition between workers in different countries, right? Ford didn't move to Mexico because they wanted to, they like the cuisine down there better or something, right? They moved down there because they knew they could pay workers way less. And I think that the only way we're going to change that dynamic, where we get pitted against each other all the time, and it's not just in the job market, but it's also it's when people come up here too, then we're still pitted against each other, is to build unity. That's the only thing I think that can stand up to that. So a lot of times right now we're taught, even by the union sometimes, to be fearful of workers in other countries. And my point is, like, hey, it's not workers in other countries that are closing down schools or hospitals or putting your house, back to the bank, or sending your kid off to a war. None of that stuff is happening by any Mexican worker. That's guaranteed, and so I think we need to have a different attitude about it, which is that we need to build unity in order to be able to stand up to this stuff. And the other thing I think we need, the big picture stuff, we want to get real big picture, is at some point we have to just question this whole system they got set up. Because right now we're still talking about how do we position ourselves best within that system so that the most people are okay and are doing as good as we can under this system. But at some point I think we need to say the whole apple cart is like, why should we assume that the way this system is set up right now, it's not like God created that, right? This was, men created this. So if it was created by people, it can be undone by people too. And again, I don't want to act like it'd be easy or simple. And a lot of attempts to do it have not gone well. But I think we do have to question that whole setup as it is right now. And that's why I want to be involved in the unions. I don't want to be involved in the unions just to do the okey doke and just to, inch things along a little. I mean, it's time for us to start talking about big stuff. It's time for us to start talking about big stuff.
All right. Well, going back to what you guys are saying about like jobs or unionizing and building a front with workers in other countries, one way or another. I mean, because I know that if I'm in a position where I own a company and and I'm looking for people to build a product for my company, I think any of us would go with the higher productive, lowest cost source for our labor. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I am not here to advocate for companies or wealthy people or anything. So so how do you convince companies to say, hey, you're better off paying an American worker 10 times what you're going to pay someone in Mexico per se? And I'm not picking on Mexico, but how are you going to go to them and argue that my American labor is worth 10 times what the labor in Mexico is? And you know what? In Mexico, I don't have to worry about paying people for FMLA days. I don't have to worry about all these other costs that are associated with doing business in America. As a worker in America, I definitely want to see American workers get everything that they can get too. I just think that unions today, now 40, 50 years ago, I do believe that unions had a place. But I think that unions today are going about it in the wrong way. I think that I think that unions should be active. Just like HR is active in trying to discipline and fire people, unions should be active before it even gets to that point in trying to get people to be the highest producing. I mean, I don't want to sound like we're just in some kind of sweatshop, but just people that come to work, man, with this attitude that, you know what, I'm here to do what AT&T or any other company is paying me to do. I'm not here to find ways. I mean, because I see a lot of people that actually work harder at not working. Now they're not. Now, am I saying that everybody that I've worked with is lazy? Because a lot of people that have watched this that worked at AT&T will say, oh, all Dack does is talk all day. You know, a lot of people will say that Dack is, you know, he's always sharing his opinions, right? But the reality is, Kirean, is anytime I've ever asked somebody to show me your numbers and put your numbers up against mine, I have yet to come across one person that I've worked with that outperformed me. And you know what? And I'm serious.
I know you're a hard worker. I said that before, and I know you are a hard worker. You also talk to people, but I think that was your right as a human, and it made my life more enjoyable when you'd come down my aisle and I knew I'd have a conversation or two. You know, I'd look forward to that, and I think that's a normal, natural human thing to have. I mean, I think the other thing though that we need to talk about too is like my job is basically running a cash register for AT&T. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm processing payments for big companies that are customers for AT&T, or I'm helping them find a payment that went missing, or I'm sending them a bill they say they never got. But it's basically running a cash register.
See, but
for
you know
AT&T.
how I respond to that, Kirean?
What's that? I
say, you know what, man, you're blessed that AT&T gave you that opportunity to run their cash register, because there's millions of other people out there that want to run that cash register too.
What?
Right?
So just to finish my thought, is that I also think though humans deserve to have something more than just that though, as part of who they are. You know, and you know I think there is an effect on people if you give 8 hours of your day to that same kind of grind, and it is a grind because like when I worked at UPS, man, my back was sore. I get my shoulder be sore. Sometimes my feet would be sore jumping in and out of the truck or in the warehouse, you know, working your butt off. But AT&T was a different kind of grind, a kind of a mental grind, you know, and it was weird because I would actually come home when I first started AT&T, I'd come home more tired than I had been working at AT&T or at UPS rather. So my point is just like as humans, I think we all deserve to have some kind of work that has some value in it and isn't just us being cogs in a machine. And I mean, I just think we need to question like, you know, because your logic is you say, well, I don't want it to go to a sweatshop, and I know you don't want it to go to slavery, but like that's the logic of where it all goes. If the company has the right to dictate to us in general and has a right to demand that we, you know, basically follow their whims, then where are the rules? And I say that it actually should be the other way around. I should say the workers should be the ones coming up with the rules. And if we also decide together, let's say F&F, where you worked for many years, let's say that was a collective where you all had an equal say in the work, how it was distributed. You know, you tried to do it in a way that was equitable to everybody so that, you know, maybe you weren't all doing the same thing every day. And then maybe you'd set standards for each other too. You know, maybe as a group you'd say our expectation is that everybody does this amount, you know, because if not, we could get another collective member in there. You know, you do something like that. But instead it's just this arbitrariness by, you know, some bean counters in New Jersey or Dallas, and it just isn't real to me.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, bean counters, huh?
Well, you know, like the people that come up with these numbers that we're supposed to hit, and who, you know, based on what? I don't know. You know, it's based on some calculation that has little to do with anybody who actually does the job.
I know, but you don't think companies have the right to have a minimum, have standards for their workers?
Well,
like production standards?
Well, I mean, I think my attitude is always to look at it from the working class point of view. So my point of view is that I think all working class people deserve to have a living wage. Everybody should be able to have a home, should be able to have food, they should be able to have education, they should be able to have health care, they should be able to have vacations.
Of course.
I believe all of that. And most working class people don't have that in this country, not consistently. And so from there, I think, you know, then we start talking about the bigger questions. But the biggest thing is like, well, who makes these decisions? Why should there be a small group of mostly rich white guys who determine almost everything about the economy, the politics, the society? Why is that set up natural and normal and good? And what I'm talking about is crazy and
no, it's not crazy. Man.
You know, because I think
You don't.
No, go ahead. You was fixing to talk.
So I think like work standards, I think should be collectively decided. But I think in my view, the thing that would make it more valuable was if we valued what we were doing, and if we saw what we were doing as being a contributor to our community or our society. I think the people that you see that work hard or like to work hard are people that feel they get some kind of value out of their job. They feel like they're making a contribution, or that they like the particular skill they're using, and I don't think we have enough of that. A lot of us get shoved into jobs, and again, I'm very thankful that I ended up at AT&T. When I got the job, I'd lost my job at UPS. I had 2 little kids, and it was really, it was a godsend to get a living wage job at AT&T. But the labor itself, the work itself, and I'm not proud of processing payments for big corporations. It doesn't give me fulfillment. So I've had to find my fulfillment other ways. But it'd be nice if we lived in a society where part of your fulfillment came from knowing that my work contributed to making this place a better place.
Yeah. I know that what I'm saying for a lot of people, it just seems like I'm attacking workers, man.
No.
But one thing that I've looked up, quite often over the last, I would say 10 or 15 years, is employee satisfaction on their job. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, like, if you look at the top 25 companies, you will not find one union company listed there. You don't. I challenge you to find that.
Okay.
There's not, because because I think that what happens, and you just touched on it. Mm-hmm. What happens is in union jobs, people focus on the paycheck. Mm-hmm. They don't focus on self. They don't focus on some sort of just fulfillment that they get from just going to work, finding something that they actually enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. Now, I talk to a lot of young people, my son and, our producer here, and I hear these young people talk about, how they don't want to get trapped working in these jobs that they just go to for a paycheck. They actually want to feel like that there's something worth living for, something worth, and even talking to people at AT&T. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that you walk it and actually talk to someone that says, man, I really enjoy my job.
Right.
I can't remember the last time I heard anybody say that.
Yeah.
So do you think that might be the result of because unions make you focus strictly on, hey, we gotta save our health care, which from the time I started we had free health care to now, for a family, it's like $400 a month.
100% right.
And plus you're spending $4,000 in a spend down.
And we're going to get hit by penalty for our spouses now.
Okay, so what's happening is the unionists keep singing these same songs.
Right.
But they're not able to hold on to anything. And Steve keeps talking about how the unions have become like a political action committee, like a PAC. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, well, the reason why the unions aren't able to hold on and to fight the way that they, and you and I have talked about this, because what's happening is we're not unified in our voting block. I mean, as far as union workers, you can go down to our office, and I'd be willing to bet you that 30 to 40% of the people either vote for the party that is anti-union or don't vote at all. Okay? So you can't sit here and complain that, hey, our issues aren't being handled in Washington when you're not participating in the thing, because there is one political party that, Steve keeps reminding me, DFL, that L stands for labor. That means that historically they have fought on the side of labor, right? And I feel like they still do, because every Democratic candidate is always saying, hey, we want to strengthen unions. And then you got the Republican Party saying, hey, we want to get rid of unions. Yeah. So if you're except the police, you're 100% right. Yeah. So if you're serious about strengthening your union, you have to consider that when you go to the ballot box. Would you agree with that or not?
Yeah, but I do, but I also think, again, I got a few different things here. So, yes, but the ballot box, I think, is a limited form of power. And I think that it gets promoted as the only way you can have power in society. And its impact has been designed so that we only get a very minimal amount of power within it. We only get to basically choose between, two, in this country, only two. Some countries you get to at least pick between 3 or 4 or 5 parties, but in this country, basically 2. And those, especially the further up you go, the party, those politicians are all vetted by the rich and powerful, So, and I'm not saying one isn't better than the other, or one isn't worse than the other, because usually one is worse. And clearly Trump was a devil, is a devil. But let's talk about Biden just to get into it a little bit. But I want to make it clear that Trump is a devil. Okay, so I've said that. That's on the record here. But Biden, in our lifetimes, 3 of the most devastating things to happen to working class people in this country, Biden was on board for. The crime bill and mass incarceration, Biden was on board for that. Was a big proponent of it. NAFTA, which was basically the reorganizing of the economy that basically allowed them to compete.
It sounds like what you guys are talking about.
So hang on. And the third thing is the Iraq War. Those are 3 of the biggest disasters for working class people in this country. And to so many intelligent people, they felt like they had to go with him because the alternative was the devil. Even though we can say, based on his resume, he has been responsible, or at least partly responsible, for some of the biggest attacks on working class people. So that's our democratic system for us, to me, is you have to face those kind of choices. And so my point is not to get caught up so much in trying to guilt people about the voting stuff, but is to try and create some real alternatives in the community and the streets, so that whoever's in power has to respond to us. And so that, because I have my doubts that we're ever going to be able to sort of vet this process the way that the rich and powerful can. I feel like it's their game. Now, I'm not saying that one side isn't worse than the other, because that's 9 times out of 10, that's the case. But if that's the end-all, be-all of what we're going to do in terms of putting our stamp on the society, then we're always just going to be playing somebody else's game. We're never going to be really, turning over the apple cart like I think it needs to be.
And I would say where what I'm talking about differs from NAFTA. See, NAFTA is so they can get in on that money with the low wages, the exploited worker. See, that's what NAFTA is about. See, when you put that living working wage, man, where they can have a quality of life too.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Living wage for someone in Mexico is
Okay.
different than San Francisco.
Okay, and it's different than them living in in Manhattan too. We can look at it like that, but it's probably not that much different than a working wage that would be, let's say, Birmingham, Alabama. Let's say some of these towns in like Laredo, Texas, and whatnot. See, let's talk about some of these towns in Arizona, in New Mexico. See, the wage it wouldn't be that much different. But see, you have billionaires that just stay right on the other side of the river, man. Especially when you get to the other side of California, man. They have all these nice houses, man. Those are people that have exploited other people, man. It's no different. It's just industrialized slavery, 2020. Ain't much different than 1820. Just like Henry Ford, since his name was brought up, he hurried up, ran down to South America and bought a rubber plantation. And he set up housings for them so they could all live right next to where they work. No need to travel, but every reason to work. They weren't getting much money. He was feeding them and everything else, man. Henry Ford was a cheapskate. See, so that was him being able to go down there and to exploit people. See, every time they cross over the south of the border, exploitation begins. And NAFTA was, let me get some of that cheap labor. I'm going to keep spooking you with walls and people running in here, but I'm going to keep throwing my businesses down there. And then I'm going to run my money further south to avoid paying taxes. See, that's where it becomes a big problem. See, if I get them on board there, then you can't run from me in the taxes. Might make us more money.
Go ahead. You got something you want to add to that?
No, maybe we could swing back. It's a good discussion. I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate this show. And one thing that I like about this show is that it is working class guys who come together, who say my opinion and my friends' opinions or my contacts' opinions are valuable and interesting, and I'm going to try and organize a format to share that with the world. And I think that's in a little nutshell is kind of like what I think all of our lives should be like. So I really give you guys props for doing your thing. I hope more people watch it. I'll try and definitely spread it around. And I always thought Dack needed a mic. Actually, I was giving him crap about that. But I also think you guys should do a spin-off sports version where you just talk about sports all day. That'd be fun too. Right. But I did want to come back to the fact about unions and racism and the black community in particular, because Dack brought up a point that is absolutely true, that for much of the history of American unions, they were used to be exclusive. They used their bargaining power to maintain exclusivity for white men in particular. And, in some ways that's been broken down, in most unions, although in some there's still a lot of that holding, particularly in the trades, which are also the better paying jobs and the higher skilled jobs. Not just better pay, but you actually have a skill. So all of that is reactionary and needs to be opposed and needs to be fought. And I would say, though, that while that's true, it's also true, though, that black people in this country have also always tried to unionize at different times. So you have and become important institutions. So you have the Sharecroppers Union in the South, which was an extremely powerful organization. And you have the night porters on the trains that ran between all the cities, which became incredibly important because it allowed black people to connect with different communities around the country. And you had people like Malcolm X who had a short stint living that, but it allowed him to travel the country, but it also gave him experience as somebody who had a living wage job, within his community, and some unity with other black guys, basically. And so I think if we just look at the union history of the white racist shit and say, well, that's the union history, I'd rather look at, all the different kinds of union history, and I'd identify with the anti-racist, and the stuff that was happening in the black community and immigrant communities as well. And I'd also say that there always was one current, at least, even during the times when the racist unions were dominant, there always was one current of the unions that said that was BS, and they took the philosophy of an injury to one is an injury to all and meant it, and I think that that's what I would want to say, that we need to raise that flag and live by it, not just say it, but live by it, and to have people challenge it if we're not living by it, Right on.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're pretty much coming to the end of the podcast here.
Right.
Did you have something you want to close with, Kirean? And then I'll let Steve do his part after. Is there something you want to say?
I appreciate the discussion. I think the thing is we need more discussions like this. So I really appreciate your show. I think we need unions to break out of the impasse that they've been in for decades. And that's going to mean, it's going to mean the unions themselves being open to their own membership, saying and speaking their minds. And even if some ideas are off the wall, or even if some ideas go against the grain, being a place where all workers can raise ideas and opinions and do so in a civil and respectful way amongst each other. And then I think we need to start pushing the boundaries. We need to stop accepting what the bosses and the politicians say is acceptable, and start setting our own terms about what's acceptable.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation. I think we had a chance to get down to a more granular level on some of the things that we thought. I think we're all walking away with some different information and different good, solid information. Better yet, I think we have a vision and know what direction to move. So I think there's some good things to go by, good information, and I hope people from both locals get a chance to see this and hear what's being said, and then do an honest self-evaluation of ourselves, not any one person, but take a real good self-evaluation and say, where am I sick and where do I need to be more healthy as a union member and as a union as a whole. So that's my takeaway,
Right on.
and that's my effort or my view going forward.
Right on.
All right. Yeah, and Kirean, I once again, man, I really do wanna thank you for joining us today, man. You really
Appreciate it, brother.
You really bring a lot to us, man, and you already know I got a lot of respect for you. You know,
Likewise.
my kids
Likewise.
have heard me talk. I mean, I literally talk to my kids about you. You know what I'm saying? And there ain't
Appreciate
too many
that, man.
people. There's not too many people that I would do that for, and you know, if I were still down working for 7250, I would have been your loudest supporter, man. And I think you know that. There's not one person in this country, man, that I think is more, you know, suited for that position. I mean, because you really, this isn't just you know, being the president of that local isn't just something that I think a lot of people in the past have just used as an opportunity to travel, opportunity to get away from being at their desk. I mean, this is, you know, anybody that's part of that local should be very proud that you have Kirean as your president, because he will fight for you, and he's gonna do everything he can to make your work conditions and life at AT&T a lot better. So I just want you to know that, man. But
It means a
as
lot
far
to me.
what's
Thanks.
that?
It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, and you know that I mean every word of it.
Appreciate
And you know, I just want everybody once again to thank you for you know, using your time to watch another episode of Dialogue to Destiny. We really appreciate your support. And if you like our conversations, you want us to continue this, please like us on Facebook or like us on YouTube. Share this, you know, this post. You know, when I put it out there, share it so that more people can get involved in the conversation and subscribe to our page. So I guess with that will end it for this episode, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.